I've been hearing a lot of questions about the Geniemon system, especially on my streams, so I decided to take some time and record this video going over all that I know about the Geniemon system. Without wasting any time, I'll start by showing off all of the Geniemon that we have in the game currently. So there are going to be two main categories, the active and the inactive Geniemon. The active Geniemon are largely going to be separated between three different rarities. You're going to have the blue rarity, the purple rarity, and the gold rarity. And all of the inactive Geniemon are going to be a part of the green rarity. Obviously, separating the rarities, there are going to be two main distinctions of Geniemon. The first of which is going to be utility Geniemon, of which there are currently two in the game, and the other is going to be combat Geniemon, which the rest of the active Geniemon take up. So when talking about the combat Geniemon, there is going to be one type of Geniemon for every single element in the game. And that of course includes Umbro, Hydro, Pyro, Electro, Animo, and Lumino. And you're going to have one of these for each of the different rarity tiers, going all the way up until Legendary. However, the Legendary ones are going to be largely exclusive to the Battle Pass. Now, there is one Geniemon in the game that is a combat Geniemon that is not tied to a specific element, and that is the miraculous Mr. Goodnight, who, instead of giving a particular element buff or element-related buff, it is going to give you healing for yourself and all of your allies as a support skill, and it's going to also give a passive to your attack, max HP, and defense. However, this is largely going to be much less useful than the element-specific buffs, especially when we compare to the purple and the legendary tier for the combat-style Geniemon. It's largely going to be very simple choosing which combat-style Geniemon you want. Just pick the one that matches the element for the highest rarity that you have. When it comes to the utility Geniemon, there are currently two in the game, the first of which is something and somebody that you're likely very familiar with, the miraculous bro Boxy. He is largely known for giving the massive passive of auto pickup range, XP gain from enemies, of a auto pickup range boost, XP gain from enemy boost, and a 15% chance to drop bonus loot, as well as the outstanding support skill, allowing him to detect one Geniemon and one chest within 100 meters. I believe most people have had this Geniemon glued to their character pretty much ever since they got him, and have largely been running around basically everywhere with the exception of the theater and the mystic maze, just because of how good that loot buff is and how good the support skill is. There's one other Geniemon that I will classify as a utility Geniemon, and that is the miraculous Para-Rabbit. Unlike Bro Boxy, I don't believe this has a guaranteed spawn or a guaranteed 100% chance to be obtained, but it has a support skill that grants self and allies a 45% damage resistance for 0.9 seconds at its level 1, and it also has a passive which is essentially an omni buff to all of the movement abilities, and that is jump speed, helix leap speed, and a reduction in your sliding friction, which will largely boost your neutral movement much better than pretty much any other setup could possibly do. Of course, there are some more accessible sources of movement out there outside of a maxed out Para-Rabbit, and I believe most people are going to be using that for the time being, especially because using other sources of movement open up the slot for Miraculous Bro, which is largely going to be the much better option to select for a utility Geniemon for that amazing loot buff. Beyond that, we have the inactive Geniemon, and these are going to largely be inconsequential whichever one you get, because you're not going to be equipping them and you're not really going to be keeping them around. These Geniemon exist for one purpose and one purpose alone, and that is to feed your active Geniemon traits. Now, I don't think most people know this, but you can actually level up the trait for an inactive Geniemon if you use 3 traits of a lower tier. And this is largely going to be a much better option compared to using a lower tier trait. So stocking up as many of these, no matter what, is going to give you a lot better options going forward. That is especially true for the trait known as Frugal, which appears to be very rare. Either that or I just haven't gotten very many of them. But there are a few traits that are actually exclusive to the gold tier that aren't just a upgraded version of a lower tier trait, and that includes Deft and At Peace. And Deft gives you the ability to quick crack a mechanism, and what that means is if you have a Geniemon with this trait equipped, whenever you interact with a puzzle as a part of a commission or any other type of mission, you'll be able to press the interact key again in that menu to instantly complete the puzzle with no downsides at all. It's largely a QOL kind of like semi-speed increase thing, so if you struggle with puzzles or you just want to not think about them whatsoever, this is definitely a trait to look for, and at peace appears to allow you to auto reel in any fish that is of a blue rarity or below. It does still appear that you have to reel in the purple rarity or higher fish, but this will largely speed up the process of fishing greatly, which is a huge benefit because there are a lot, and I do mean a lot, of things to purchase in that fishing shop. Now, there's one other thing to mention about Geniemon before we get into the Ascension of the active Geniemon, and that has to do with the different variants of them. So each Geniemon is going to have a standard, an alternate, and a shiny variant to it. Now, the standard, which is normally referred to as the miraculous version, is going to be the most common edition of that genie that you will see. However, there's going to be a slightly rarer version called the ardent version, which is going to be essentially the exact same as the miraculous, with the only exception being a different color scheme. And there's going to be one other type of Geniemon which actually does have a big difference, and that is going to be the shiny version. And the shiny version is the exact same in its support skill and its passive, but it has one additional trait slot that is instantaneously unlocked. These are largely going to be the best Geniemon that you will be able to obtain of that type, but of course are also going to be the rarest. Now, largely, I don't think that final trait slot is going to make an enormous impact over not having that last trait slot, mostly because you cannot stack the exact same trait type more than one time. However, more trait slots are always going to be better, but I definitely wouldn't say to sweat too much if you don't have a shiny variant, especially if you have a Geniemon like the Miraculous Bro Boxy, which you are mostly using for the passive and the active skill, and the only other loot buff that you can activate is Frugal, and the only other one that I think is like definitely something that you'd want on your Bro Boxy for the quick crack mechanism. Now, with all this said about the Geniemon, how do you actually ascend them in order to get those extra trait slots? So the primary way in which you will ascend them is starting by leveling them up, which you will take them to level 20, after which you will then be given the option to ascend. And you will be able to use one of two resources to ascend, one of which being an identical copy of that Geniemon, or you will be able to utilize the Yum Yum Milk, which you're only able to get from the Immersive Theater Exchange currently once per reset. So you're largely going to want to save the Yum Yum Milk for your most important Geniemon or your rarest Geniemon. I wound up spending mine on the Miraculous Bro Boxy early on so I could level up faster, but it would largely be the most efficient thing to save it for something like the Battle Pass Geniemon, because I don't believe you are able to get this any other way than through the Battle Pass purchases, meaning that you won't be able to ascend it for those extra copies. But even without Ascensions, it's largely going to be the best variant of any of the offense Geniemon that you can equip for that particular element. The Battle Pass Geniemon are also unique in the fact that they are the only Geniemon to start out with all 4 trait slots unlocked. That is another reason why you don't need to worry about the Ascensions too much on these or sweat about them, and they are also the only Geniemon that do not have any variants whatsoever. That is, of course, the extent of my knowledge. Of course, I could be entirely wrong, and we could reach, I don't know, level 65, and they have like a 0.001% chance of spawning in the wild or in a mission. Who knows? But the only way that I've observed to get these is through the Battle Pass. Now, once you do have trait slots unlocked, you'll be able to select any of the inactive Geniemon that you have, and you'll be able to put a skill on that Geniemon, transferring it from the inactive Geniemon to the main Geniemon, consuming that inactive Geniemon, and applying that skill to the main Geniemon. You are able to swap out these traits at any time. However, it will remove the previous trait that you have active, which isn't too bad if you have a trait that is like a low power, low quality one, but you get a skill that is much more impactful, then you're going to be in a rough spot because you're going to lose that trait later. So when it comes to your most valuable ones, like Frugal, Deft, and At Peace, I'd say save those for a Geniemon that you are more than ready to put this on. Now, there is one other note to mention about Ascensions, and that is once you ascend them for the first and the second time, it will reset their level to 0. However, when you send them for the third and final time, they do appear to remain at level 60. I did not have to re-level up my Miraculous Bro Boxy, which I would have dreaded if I had to, because it took a lot of XP to get to that level 60. But each Geniemon gets ascended 3 times. Now, there is something that I don't quite know yet, and that's if you are able to ascend a shiny Geniemon using a normal variant of the Geniemon. If anybody in the comments can confirm or deny this, I would really appreciate it, but the only Geniemon I have that is shiny is this bee, which is also coincidentally the only variant of the bee that I have. But obviously, since we now know a lot about the Geniemon, now you'll probably want to figure out exactly how to get the most Geniemon possible. Now, one of the easiest ways that you're going to be able to get the Geniemon is by going into your commissions. So this was the strategy that was found by another content creator by the name of Skull CJ. Now, I don't know if the strategy was found by him, but he was the one to sound out on it. Essentially, you're going to want to look for one of these commissions that has a chance for the Geniemon rescue occurrence, which you can find right here in the commission occurrence. Now, Capture is the main one that I see people grind because it is definitely the fastest one to get through. So if you are looking to grind out those Geniemon, those would be the commissions that you're going to want to look out for. What would happen in that mission is that you would complete the main objective or a main objective of it, and then the Rescue the Geniemon will pop up. It has a chance to pop up, but it's not guaranteed. Now, I do think that it's been reported that there is a limit of this being 15 per day. So that is something to bear in mind. But the main reason why this is the easiest is 1, you don't really have to go anywhere. 2, you're grinding out other materials alongside getting the Geniemon. And 3, they have a 100% capture rate if you complete the extra objective, meaning that you don't have to worry about any of the Geniemon food whatsoever. Now, there is another source of Geniemon, and that is going to be through overworld exploration. And you're going to need a particular resource called Yum Yum Treats if you want to get the best Geniemon and have the highest chances of getting the ones that you want. And you will forge these using gold sand, some enemy materials that you probably have more than 1,000 of by this point, snowcaps, which can be found in the Ice Lake sewers, which you can largely pick up as you're also hunting the Geniemon, and the silverite, which can be found in the caves outside of Ice Lake, and as well in the Glevum Pit Mine area. Now, the main areas that you're going to find Geniemon are going to essentially be anywhere that is on the map that doesn't also have a boss in its main area. Pretty much anywhere in Ice Lake, you can get Geniemon. Anywhere over here, outside of it, you can get Geniemon in the lower level. Geniemon all around here, but not in this stretch of land over here because that's leading up to the boss for the week. Pretty much all throughout the sewers, you're going to find Geniemon. All throughout Glevum Pit, until you get to the boss, you're going to find Geniemon. Not inside of the Gallia Theater, inside of Lanza Fortress, pretty much all through it, again, you're going to find Geniemon. And also, same goes for Purgatoria Island until you reach the boss arena, in which there won't be any Geniemon in that immediate boss zone. So there are going to be 2 main things outside of course having enough Yum Treats stocked that you're going to want to have in order to find as many Geniemon as possible, and one of which is going to be the Bro Boxy, because again, he will mark any Geniemon in a 100-meter radius. Sit around one zone, cast your skill. Now, when it comes to the traits that you're going to want to equip on your Geniemon, it is also going to vary depending on the type of Geniemon that you're building, as well as the character that you're building it for, because different characters are going to want different stats. So, for instance, if you are wanting to make your Geniemon more of a utility Geniemon for speed, necessarily, you're going to want to put on stuff like jump speed, helix sleep speed, slide speed, and dodge cooldown maybe, but those other three are going to be much better options. Obviously, for Broboxy, Frugal is going to be the best option on him. Auto pickup range, not as much. You don't really have to worry about this so much. You already have more than enough between Broboxy and your natural auto pickup range, so you would much rather have something like Deft or a movement skill or two, such as the Helix Leap Speed and Jump Speed. Now, when it comes to your offensive Geniemon, obviously attack, defense, max HP, and max shield, depending on what kind of character that you're building. Most characters, when dealing damage, are going to want to attack. There are certain other characters who will scale differently based on their kits. I know, for instance, Hellfire, you would actually want some more max HP on her. But since you are obviously building more for offensive stats, you can also just put in any mixture of these stats depending on your character. Apart from that, support skill cooldown might be really good. Now, this is one of the better ones that you can put on Broboxy, at least if you're using him in the overworld to hunt down chests and other Geniemon. This also isn't super necessary, because the primary use for him will always be the passive for the extra loot gain in the missions. That just about does it for all of the tips regarding Geniemon that I have. If any of this helped you out, which I definitely believe the whole knowledge of the fact that you can combine multiple Geniemon of the same type to get a higher level of the boost, essentially stack them all the way up to gold. I definitely think that's something that a lot of people didn't know about originally. If any tips helped you out, I would like to hear exactly which one helped you out the most in the comments down below. Also, if you're enjoying my content covering Duet Night Abyss and would like to see more in the future, be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you never miss a video covering this game. With that all out of the way, thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I will see you all next time.